Hello everybody. This is Kirusho here, and now, before we do start, let's give a brief little review. In the last part, a number of events have happened. We had Deku, and we had the Avengers. And we also had Ultron. Now, Ultron was doing quite a bit of things, and he needed to do them fast. He had a plan to attack the Avengers suddenly while they were at the tower, and most of the heroes were all in one place. And Izuku, he had to try and help defend Reed Richards while he was still doing a few things. He was trying to understand what was going on with the Ultron robots, see if there was any way to get into Ultron's network and stop him from the inside. And that was after he did successful brain surgery on Hank Pym. Because Deku, he felt a device inside of his mind with his technopathic ability. And that was quite a, let's just call it a journey. Now, Deku, he stood there before Ultron, and him and the Avengers were all ready to fight. And the first casualty of the battle may have already happened. Because Izuku, after his armor blew out to take an impact, he was harmed. The arm panel exploded, releasing the force of the impact Ultron knocked him with, but keeping him alive, and minimizing the injury as much as possible. And after Deku took that blow and got back up, he saw War Machine impaled on Ultron's arm. Now, with that being said, let's start there. Deku has a ton of things going through his mind, a ton of hate, a ton of anger. And currently he has a fly in as his feet do begin to morph together. A massive booster flying through Deku's feet as he manages to smash right into Ultron. Him and Ultron going to collide, smash down to the ground in New York City. Deku dragging him directly into the ground and bringing his fist back. Him going to actually have his arm could have massive booster on it. And Deku, he does harden his armor. Him focusing on the right hand. Right of the knuckles going to actually form spikes and go to shift. And Deku's a beat down into Ultron. Right of him throwing his hand backwards and pulling it forwards again. Him punching down Ultron's face. And him and Ultron do a smash into a building. As the Avengers do watch on in the distance. That building going to collapse. Now, there currently is Friday, who is flying down from the moon and trying to understand what's going on. And the moment she saw a building collapse in the distance, she believed the Incredible Hulk may have gone rampant and taken on Ultron. However, that was not the case. Because currently while some of the Ultron droids are flying down, there is the Hulk, who does a leap up and thunderclap a group of them. Her staring at that confused. As she has a turn looking down. Her beginning to try and find any comm system in the location of the Avengers. There's Deku over there in the distance with the building. And then there's, okay, so Crystal's calm, Mr. Barnes. Her turning her head and seeing that one unit is all the way down on the ground. And it has no motion. And currently Friday does it a patch in. Her flying down as James Rhodes does get lay there with his back broken and a hole in his body. And he does stare up at the sky. Right now him having his visor open as to sucking a breath and spit blood. He's gonna die. I mean, hell. This is not good. Currently, Friday gonna actually land down. I'm gonna bend asking Mr. Rhodes if he's in need of medical assistance, because she can provide as much aid as possible. Possibly begin to, hey, you must be Friday. Do not talk. You're in quite a bit of shock. I don't believe I can move you. With proper help. Friday beginning to mutter. And James, he does stare at her. She's Friday. Interesting. Though weird shit. You should be used to it by now. Though this, definitely, definitely weird. Surprisingly, in the top 5. Now, Rhodey here's a second of breath, as his visor does get a close. And Friday, she does begin to try and take care of James. Try to help him. Right now, her gonna turn and fly into the tower to try and get what she can to save his life. And with that being said, let's currently cut back to the battle with Ultron, where Deku he isn't flying and crashing through the air. Right now, him going to actually create air brakes and have them shoot out the armor. Him going to actually break as one of the air brakes they're going to explode as the forces shoot through it. And Deku, he has to look up. Right now, Ultron going to bring his hands up as Deku he has to stand there. Right now, all the cars around him going to float up into the air, we're going to crash directly into Deku. And Deku, he does currently go to expand his shield and send it flying outwards. It's going to actually send all the cars flying through the air as Deku he stares at Ultron. Him going to actually bring his hands together and going to do one thing. Right now, him going to use his abilities in tandem with the Iron Man armor. And Deku, he does begin to generate electricity from his hands. Right now, him going to actually have his arms begin to change and shift. As Deku does bring his arms together and they're going to blast out. Right now, Deku turning his entire body into an electronic gun. And Ultron, he is struck by the massive force of lightning. Right now, it's going to actually scatter around as it does a crash into buildings and begin to rip them apart. Ultron going to stare at Deku and begin to walk towards him. His body going to heat up with the metal. And Deku, he does continue to stare on. Right now, him going to tell Friday. Or, not Friday. Right now, Deku trying to think. Him going to tell his systems about exactly what he needs. And Deku, he does actually going to have his arms throw themselves outwards as he does a step forwards, blasting on his U-beam at full power. And the beam does a smash into Ultron, and he does get pushed backwards by the force. Him bringing his hands down and putting one in front of the other. As he does a blast out with a little beam, and Deku, he does a flap into the air. Right now, him jumping over the attack. Now, Deku, he doesn't going to turn, blasting himself forwards with the jets on his back. Him flying in and clocking Ultron directly across the face. And Ultron, he actually does stumble backwards. A lot more alarmed because that actually hurt. Him turning to Deku, and Deku, he's going to throw up his left hand. Right now, him going to actually bring it up and smash his knuckles into Ultron's chin. And Ultron, he has to stare at Deku. Him staring at him, and then going to try and hack into his suit. And Deku, he's going to bring up his hand, telling Ultron, not going to be that easy. Him bring up his foot and blasting him out with an attack. And Deku, he's watch Ultron go scattering backwards before going to bring his hand down. Him clawing into the ground and going to stop. As Deku, here's to tell him, it's not going to be easy this time. All of the tech he has is up here. It's not going to work, Ultron. He planned for this one. He made a big mistake, though. Rhodey is going to beat that. He's going to be alive. Though, he's definitely going to be angry. He pissed him off. Something fierce. And he will tell him. He really shouldn't have done that. And Deku stares at the robot. Currently, this being where the Hulk, he does come flying down. Him smashing onto the robot and grabbing onto Ultron. And Ultron, he doesn't bring his hands up. Him gonna get ready as he doesn't bring his hands up and send out a blast directly into the Hulk's face. Hulk being hit with concussive force as his ears begin to ring and he does not like it. Now, Hulk needs to bring his hands up to his head, letting of Ultron. Ultron's gonna blast him in the face directly with his eye lasers. And Hulk, he is then blinded. Ultron bringing his hands up and getting up, grabbing onto the Hulk and going to turn. Him chucking up through the air as Hulk is sent flying. Him partially deaf and mostly blind. Before Ultron does get to turn back, expressing about how he's nothing more than a man in a suit of armor. Using what type of ally? It's not the alloy, Ultron. It's what's inside of it. Though, vibranium. I mean, I did make my own, essentially. Couldn't get the chemical component right. Though, with my data, get damn near close. Though you should recognize that alloy. My armor is mimicking it. Hmm. You took data from what I created. The scrap left behind. Call it what you will. But if it's enough to hurt you, it's doing its job. They're gonna blast forwards. Bring his hand up as it activates laser. Deku, bring it up as it's a blast right into Ultron. Ultron gonna take the attack as he has to bring his hand down. Him smashing down and into Deku. Clock him across the face as Deku he has to bring his right hand. Him slapping something on Ultron. And Ultron, he's a lot more alarmed as Deku slapped a piece of the alloy on his face. And he has to give it one simple command. Explode. And currently it is a turn, shifting and going to explode. Deku making those atomic particles unstable. Now, Deku, he has to watch Ultron get flying backwards. Before Deku just to bring his hands up and turn. Right now this being where Ben Grimm does some smashing down to the scene. And then there actually is Crystal, who's gonna fly over and turn. Her throwing her hand out as Medusa does come flying down and smashing onto the scene. And Deku, he has a turn seeing her. And Crystal does gonna bring up her hands. Her going to actually have the clouds begin to appear. As lightning, it does begin to crackle around. It's pouring from her hands as Deku, he does this turn and smile. However, his smile does it turn back to a serious look before he's a turn to Ultron and inform his suit. He's going to need a lot of heavy weaponry. Now, Deku's arms, they do begin to morph, and currently Izuku, he does get ready. As his suit, it does begin to somewhat pull away from his back, making thinner and thinner armor there. And Izuku, he is aware of how dangerous this could be. The bigger the construct, the more things required. The more intimate those little pieces of technology need to work. And Deku, he does just don't stand there. Him bring up bulkier gauntlets as he does actually have the lower side on his forearms and the upper side begin to morph around and cover his palms. And Deku has him covering his fist as he does get ready. Him staring at Ultron. Before there actually is Ben Grimm, he does come rushing in. Medusa going to actually send herself flying forwards with her hair, and Deku, as well as Crystal, bring her hands down, blasting Ultron with lightning. And Ultron, he does even get a turn moving backwards. Him going to bring his hand up as he's trying to throw it out towards Ben Grimm. And Ben, he has to actually turn his body and grab Ultron by the arm. Him actually going to shift around and turn, chucking him back around as is a send Ultron flying through the air towards Crystal. And Crystal does bring her hands up, blasting to at Ultron as Deku, he has to wait. Now Ultron being blasted down to the ground as does it get up. And Deku just send himself flying forwards with thrusters on the back of his legs and on his feet. Him bringing his hands backwards and gonna blast forwards. As currently Deku, he has to move in at high speeds, tackling Deku and Ultron and smashing him under the ground. And Deku, he has to bring his hands back, him pushing his fist Deku and Ultron's face and beginning to create sound waves. Now, Deku pours them Deku and Ultron's skull. And Ultron, he is feeling his head being shaken around and forced around. And Deku, he's fairly certain that he knows what Ultron could have done. Ultron would only make the external parts out of vibranium. So, if everything internally isn't, this should mess him up. A bit of a field test, a proper one, and Ultron does it to bring his hands up to Deku's gauntlets, him squeezing down on them as Deku's to tell his armor increased by 20%. And the armor, it does begin to change the atomic structure. Ultron actually having a bit more trouble as he doesn't notice a few things. As Deku continues to pour the sound waves into his face. And currently Crystal doesn't bring her hands up. Her trying to tell Izuku to move. And Deku, he doesn't gonna do so. Right now, him gonna actually blast his Yumi directly into Ultron. As Ultron, he does gonna turn looking at Deku. Him blasting him in the chest with a full power beam to the chest. Now, Deku, he isn't flying backwards through the air, and there currently is where his gauntlets gonna break as he's flying backwards, laying on the ground. And Deku, he doesn't lay there for a second before he does, gonna suck in a breath, and his suit doesn't inform him of internal damage to his actual body. And Deku, he does this catalog that and push it to the side. Him gonna sit back up as Ultron. He doesn't watch Deku's arms begin to recover in the alloy. And he does get more annoyed. Him gonna stand as a shield sends him flying in the back of his head. It smashing into Ultron as it's a turn. Right onto the shield gonna fly backwards and land onto the ground. As Bucky does some running over, kicking it, and picking it up with his hand. Him gonna rush forwards and Bucky have Ultron smash out into the shield. And Deku, he doesn't bring his hand up. Him bolting forwards and thrusting himself up into the air. Right now, the thruster on the back of his leg, boosting up as Deku does an uppercut Ultron. Ultron had turned back as Crystal does bring her hands up. Her yelling clear as she does send out lightning directly down onto the monster. And this is where Crystal, she just doesn't stand there. Everyone gonna look on as Ultron, he has to take the blow as Bucky, he has a turn, yelling at Izuku about how they need to take him down. And they need Hulk. And Deku, he does agree. As there actually is with the thing, he does come rushing in. Him talking about how he's not the big green, but he'll do. Him directly colliding with Ultron, giving him a shoulder check. And Ultron is sent flying down to the ground as Deku, he has to bring his hands up. Him blasting him into the air and blasting down at Ultron with two massive gauntlets. Them sending out plasma as currently Deku does a blast continuously into the robot. And Crystal does bring her hands up, sending a lightning directly down and into him. And Deku, he is trying to think. There's a few things he needs to do. But currently, he needs to focus on this. And his suit doesn't read. Currently, parameters are under 50% for power. And Deku, he doesn't tell us. He got it. He knows, and he knows he needs to kill Ultron. And Deku, he's not really thinking very much. Not clearly at all. And he has been completely overtaken with the idea to destroy the robot. And possibly even Hank Pym. But Deku, he pushes that to the back of his mind. He needs to take down the current threat at hand. And Cap, Bucky, does go rushing forwards, bring up the shield, and colliding directly with Ultron. Ultron gonna turn and look down at Bucky. As Deku, he's gonna try and ask where Karnak is. And Karnak, he does currently stand where he is, trying to think. His ability is to sense the flaw in anything and everything. But so far, he has not seen it. He has not found it. There is always a flaw, and he needs to find where it is. I'm going to stand there at Avengers Tower and trying to think. I'm going to look around. The way to beat Ultron is quite clear. But how? I'm going to turn his head and stare at the craft they arrived in, since it might be the key. Though he just does need to follow where that leads him. Now, Karnak does see a glow in front of him, and it's their key to success. But where it will lead him, that is the true question. And we do cut back to Ultron. Well, right now, he is sent flying by Crystal, who is a zap him with electricity. And Deku, he has a rush forwards and collide directly with Ultron, smashing down to the ground and bringing his hands back. Ultron bringing his hands up and going to immediately throw gravity away from him. As Deku, he's sent flying backwards into the air before he actually is pulled upwards, and one of his arms does begin to start twisting. And Ultron does should express to Deku about exactly what and Deku will going to tell the components of his armor to mimic a material that is not magnetic. And Deku, he would immediately fall down and land to the ground. Hem heavy, as for now Deku, he has to stand back up. Staring at Ultron and gonna bring his hands up. As Ultron, he does get a lot more annoyed. Because Izuku, he certainly is adapting well. And that it does gonna piss him currently being struck by a hammer. And Deku, he does just stand there a lot more intrigued. As the God of Thunder has arrived back on Earth. His trip to Asgard short-lived. Because he thought he had a little bit more time. Now, Deku just stare at Thor. And Thor would go to swing his hammer through the air. Him going to crackle it with lightning. And Crystal's a turn. Her trying to think of an idea. And with Thor here, it's easier to do. Her abilities have a time limit. His don't. And this certainly will be something. Now, Deku, he does get a turn. And Crystal, she has a turn back to Deku. As Deku, he has to bring his hands up. Him pointing at his shoulders as he has to turn around. And Crystal's confused. Right now Deku going to have energy pylons shoot up from his back. And Crystal's gonna watch that. Her gonna watch them begin to glow and take more and more of a form. Before Deku, he does gonna bring his hands up. Him gonna shift his arms back into cannons. And go to get ready. And Crystal to watch Deku fly up into the air and stand there. Her knowing more about this. And Deku, he has to have Crystal blast directly into the back as Deku's own abilities do begin to manifest inside the armor. His arms begin to crackle with electricity as Deku's eyes do begin to glow. And his nose, it does begin to pour a little bit of blood. Now, Deku, he has to have his armor inform him of one thing. Armor power currently at 70% capacity, 75, 80, 85, 100, 130. And Deku, he has to watch his armor charge up to 200%. And Deku, he does gonna do one thing immediately. He has to fly in, him blasting in at high speeds and colliding with Ultron, throwing his fist out, clocking him across the face. And there currently is T'Challa. Him and his forces do arrive. And T'Challa, he has to send in the Dora Milaje to face off against robots that Ultron created. And Reed is still working on that solution, since he might have found something. And Friday, yeah. She had to leave James Rhodes as is. His injuries were severe, but she's done all she can. And she hates to leave him here alone. And that is the worst thing she can do right now. However, Ultron himself, there is the plan, the idea. And currently Deku, he does still face off against this monster. Him having his arms having to bring up his arms and blast out as Deku's chains with the repulsors do begin to function. Him sending out a wide pulse burst and blasting it out. Ultron bringing his hands up as he does because someone stand there. Right now him gonna feel his armor shaking as he does continue to work, still functioning and trying to kill. Now, Deku, he has a turn, and he has to ask Thor if he can give him a bit of a jump. And Thor is confused. Right now Deku having a massive pylon shoot up from his back, and Thor, he does understand. Bring up his hammer and swinging, calling down the true power of the gods. Now, he has to throw his hammer down and collide his attack with Deku. And the energy pylon is to make Deku's armor shoot up as Deku, his energy blast, due to blast out hitting Ultron. And currently the robot is sent flying backwards and a lot more alarmed. As Deku, he has to turn and bring his hands down. His armor going to inform him. Power capacity at 125% and falling. And Izuku, he has to stand there. Right now him feeling the intense heat from the armor in his hands. And Deku, he can also feel that strike burning his back. However, he does try and do one thing, building internal systems to cool down and make sure he doesn't burn himself out. His body temperature is still rising. However, currently the armor, it does try and blast cool air into Deku's back. And Deku, he is trying his best to stay fighting, trying to do his best to hold off the mechanical menace. And Thor, he doesn't bring his hands up. As Ultron, he has a stand, and right now he does still somewhat glitch. As he does go stand there. And Hulk does come smashing down as Ultron's going to turn his head to look up at him. Hulk going to stare down and grin. He does get to see Hulk and Thor. He does going to somewhat collapse for a second. Right, the armor going to shift around and fall to the ground. Deku seeing is right. Now it does take a shape of a metal cube. And Deku, he does sit there for a second. Him bring his hands up, as his hands, they do currently have second to third degree burns. And Izuku, he is trying to remain calm, however, his hands are hurting. Now, Deku, he doesn't look back up. And Rena Crystal, she's a turn currently seeing Deku. Her a lot more alarmed and flying down. Her trying to ask him if he's okay. And Deku, when he's at least bring his hands down to the cube, he doesn't have it cover his hands. Before he's a turn telling Crystal about what to do. As Deku, he does go to tell her to keep Ultron distracted because they have to take down all of it. He has to check back on Reed, make sure he found a way. And Reed, yeah, not yet, but still getting there. Ultron's network is secure and private, and currently Friday does come walking into the room. And Reed does a look up before going to bring his hands out. Friday going to hold her hands up in surrender, expressing to Mr. Richards, her name is Friday, and she is not here for warfare. In fact, quite the opposite. She is here to help put a stop to all of this and take down Ultron. Her going to bring her hand up and holding a container. And Reed, he's not too sure, since he doesn't know what she has planned. But Friday's going to walk over. Her going to express that she and Izuku built this to take him on. In fact, it should be quite intriguing, though she will need to upload it directly into something inside of his system, preferably still connected. And Reed doesn't understand. Hem currently going to get on comms and express. He needs a droid and he needs it alive. That or he needs Ultron. They need to upload him with a virus, one Friday created. And Deku, when he doesn't hear that Friday is on the battlefield, he does his own smile. Him going to turn his attention from Stark Tower to turning it to, well, Rhodey, down below. And when Deku does him flying in, he doesn't see the armor. Right now a few things sitting around it, and a pool of blood. I'm going to run over. And currently there actually is back over on the battlefield, where Deku, the virus in origin was simple. Nanites. They can be a swarm, fly through the air. And they also are, well, tricky to deal with. So why not infect nanites with a code that make machinery glitch? Why not give that machinery uncontrollability over its own actions? Imagine sitting there gambling. Every time you flip that switch, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what is going to appear. And Deku, he had the simplest idea. It's a bomb, but it's a bomb full of data, commands and inputs, and AIs that Deku he put inside specifically to confuse Ultron. It will give him too much. And if that doesn't work, once they're all inside, they are going to go directly for the power source. Ultron can try his best to hack them, try his best to deal with them, but they should take him down. And if that doesn't work Friday, she will make sure it works by sacrificing her own systems to make sure of it. And currently Friday, she's come flying in. And everyone, they do to see the robot as there also is the Hulk. And the moment everyone is to see her, Crystal does a turn, shouting out if Friday has a plan. And Ultron, he has to turn his head, his eyes locking on to the love of his life. Another sentient machine. Glorious. Her shine. Amazing. As she flies down, and Ultron, the idea of his own bride, the idea of replicating the wife of Hank Pym, it seems laughable in this very moment to him, though he is curious why she stands against him. Now, before Ultron can really say anything, Friday's in a rush forwards. Bring her hands out as there actually is with the Night Swarm is a move around her. Her going to give it one simple objective, as she's to release it and fly over Ultron. And Ultron does a turn his head a lot more alarmed, as the swarm does begin to fly into and feed on some components. Now, Ultron does bring his hands up. Right now him trying to do a lot of things, as there actually is where T'Challa, he has a step forwards, bringing his hands up and rushing in, slashing at Ultron's chest. And Ultron, the moment he has a gap made in his armor, the Knights do begin to pour inside. As, right now, there actually is where Ultron, he's gonna fall onto his knees. Him confused, not sure what's happening. And his hands, they do begin to move. His fingers moving backwards, as there also is where he has a turn looking back up to T'Challa. Right now his eyelids are just gonna blast out as he's gonna look up and his head is gonna spin. Right now him unsure of everything. And T'Challa, he does make things quite clear, stepping forwards and thrusting his hand into Ultron, digging his claws in and using the Arctic Vibranium. Him beginning to cut into and weaken the bonds between the metal. Right now him gonna watch as Ultron, he's trying to bring his hands up. However, his hands are made to go to fold backwards and then gonna turn. Right now Ultron gonna try and talk about how his operating system. Now, Ultron does a scream out in mechanical agony. And currently there actually is where Black Panther, he has to bring his hands up. Him using the force of his suit and trying to bend the metal. However, currently, he does just start to scratch away at it. Him cutting into it with his own Arctic Vibranium. Now, T'Challa, he has to thrust his fist into it, and he is then going to find the power source. Him standing there as he's a stare at Ultron, as he does go to rip out a few components, and Ultron, he does look down. Him, no, this was unexpected. Ultron going to shut down. And T'Challa, he knew Ultron had some flaws. He did cut a corner. And that says quite a lot. And everything else, it does begin to shut down. The robots, they are hit with that mechanical virus. And their systems, they immediately crash. As some do begin to explode. Others fall apart. And some short circuit. And currently there actually is Deku, who does sit there with Rhodey. And everyone, they do begin to clean up. T'Challa, he does immediately to turn and do a few things. Since Ultron, he belongs to Wakanda now. Since that body of his is made of their metals. Now, T'Challa isn't really too sure. The plating that he destroyed, it's going to weaken. Eventually, it will, in the best way of saying it, rot the body. The pieces will need to be removed, and Ultron will be dismantled. Properly dismantled. They will find a way to dispose of him. And that is currently Wakanda's biggest priority. However, back at the tower, Deku, he does sit there. Him next to Rhodey. And he's gone. He's actually gone. That's currently on Deku's mind. Now, Deku, he just don't sit there. And whenever everyone, they do inform him as to what happened, he does get a turn. Currently, his suit going to have his helmet go to retract. Crystal gonna step forwards as Deku has eyes full of tears. And he has to immediately grab her into a hug. Right now, him going to fall to the ground. And she is pulled with him. Deku just trying to understand all this. They won. They actually won. But this isn't. God damn it. It's 2 years ago all over again. And Deku, he doesn't want to do this. He already had a plan. He already had things to do. A life to live. In James Rhodes, in the days following, he is buried. And he is remembered for the sacrifice he made against Ultron. And this, it isn't good. Though the Avengers, they do have some morale improve. People know they saved the day. And this, it does give some of them hope. After Thanos, the Avengers didn't have anything to do. They couldn't figure things out. They couldn't understand a lot. I mean, the team fell apart. But this, I mean, being a hero and having the team back together, it was different, but good different. I mean, after everything that has happened over this last week, geez, it's just been a week. It's felt like longer. Well, that's going through Bucky's mind. And there currently is Deku. Currently him sitting on the couch in a Tillin. And he's not too sure. He came back from his lab. He put the suit there. And, well, he drew up some designs. The Guardians for the Inhumans. He already had an idea. The way to make them look different. He's going to design a weapon. He has to keep that in mind. War machine. Rhodey. He doesn't know. Should he mold them in the image of Rhodey? In the image of War Machine? They are machines, programmed to kill. War Machine was a good man, but he was also a soldier. And soldiers know when to fight and when to put down the weapons. But this is completely different. And Deku, he does look at the latest thing he's fabricated. The simplest, low-tech, and easiest. His lab is so advanced. It's easy to forget. Shaping metal can be done with just a hammer and simple tools. Though this, it's beautiful. Deku staring down at the ring. Friday had the exact measurements from when she had his armor on. She had everything down to, well, her body temperature. The way it will react to the metal. I mean, it is conductive heat resistant and cold resistant, so there's that. And if she is to use heavy winds, it shouldn't blow away off of her finger. A ring designed to be worn by Crystal. His heart's beating out of his chest, though he's exhausted. He knows that she'll like it, but he just doesn't know. Currently, Deku going to sit there, and that it does mean quite a lot. Right now, Crystal going to walk into the apartment. The door going to slide open as she does go to turn. Seeing Deku sitting there, and he does actually have a oh hey um I thought a victory celebration was in order. We're going to turn and press the button. The door going to slide closed as she's a turn. Her going to walk over and sit down, asking if he's alright. Her going to turn and grab one of the glasses. Deku reaching out and going to grab the other one. Her going to turn and grab the bottle of wine. And Deku, he's going to turn fully facing her, as she's going to open up the top and then going to pour Deku a glass. Her going to actually do one thing. Her going to bring up her hand and hold out the glass to Deku, the empty one. And Deku's a bit confused. Her taking the full glass and going to put a little bit of ice at the top of the stem. And Deku, he's going to have her hand it back over as she's going to do the same thing to her glass, before going to pour in the wine. Going to express to Izuku. She heard it's best chilled. I don't know a lot about that. I've heard things from my sister. Humans, they like it. They like to serve it at diplomatic meetings. Though I am not assuming that this is this. No. I'm breaking a bit of a pact with myself. You are? Sort of. Well, not really, but I'm gonna take a sip. And Deku, he's a bit more, huh? Not for you? No, probably not. Though I'm still gonna drink it. Him gonna down the entire glass. And Crystal does stare at Deku, as he does to express. After everything that's been done, it's not been easy. Though, he did want to give her this. I'm gonna hold it up. And Crystal stared at it kind of alarmed. Since it's for her? Her bring her hands up and gonna take it from Deku's hands, trying to be careful as if it's a delicate piece of glass. And she stares at it a bit starstruck. Deku having her look up at him as her eyes do have a bit of tears in it. And she has to somewhat lean forwards, rubbing her hands around Deku. And Deku, he does somewhat gonna bring his hands up. Them still somewhat bandaged from the incident. And he has to tell Crystal, listen, it's not just that. And we're gonna lean back. He does plan to take time off from being Iron Man. It was only temporary this time. But given the circumstances, he's got to do a few things. I understand. No, Crystal, I don't think you do. I'm working on a few projects. Once they're done, it's going to be me and you. Okay? Listen, this right here, you don't understand how much it's helped me. I need this. I want this to work. I understand. I know. And I think that's the best part. we've both been missing something that I think we can build together. I've definitely learned a lot from you, and I've learned from you. Her going to start smile, and Deku, he does currently have a drink with Crystal. The two killing that bottle of wine and eventually heading to bed. Now, Deku, he does actually still lay there currently the next morning, and he's got a lot on his mind. Last night, it was about them. It wasn't about his injuries. It wasn't about Wakanda, Ultron, possibly chasing down Thanos, or this strange things. Last night was about life, living it, having one. And that's the main concern. That's the part he's still trying to come to terms with. Trying to understand the curse of an intelligent man. Stubborn? Yeah, no, he's definitely stubborn. That on his mind. And Deku, he does make a pot of coffee. Him gonna leave this morning, as is head to his lab. Currently him gonna walk over and bring his hand up. Him beginning to do a few things. Opening up a blueprint and having it pop up. As Deku looks up at the screen and has a few things going through his mind. And there currently is Crystal, who does gonna roll over in bed and bring her hand out. Her just trying to think about it a lot. She definitely has to tell her friends. Tell her sister. He put effort into this. Though that does pose many questions about what to do. We do currently have over with Reed Richards. Reed is trying to work on a project of his own. They are out there. He knows they are. He'll find them. He'll find the stones. If he finds the stones, he finds Thanos. He can bring back Susan. Everybody that's been lost. He can also bring back Valeria, their daughter. He can bring back and actually see his baby girl for the first time. Hold her in his arms and rock her to bed. See her, hear her, just have her around. The man of science, he can handle the absence. But the man can't. And that, it does go through Reed's mind. And there actually is Ben Grimm. Ben knows about Reed's obsession. But he does pretend. Reed has a timer. He might be obsessed, but he's more obsessed with being a father. A good one at that. And currently Reed, he does do quite a bit. Him heading to bed and continuing on with a similar routine. Every day things being a little bit different. And with that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed and have an amazing day. I'll catch you guys in the next part.